The other reason for my financial hardship is actually something that a lot of people can relate to, and that's COVID. Okay, when COVID came, it was a big deal that affected the whole world and a lot of industries within it, including my own. I'm not going to go into detail into like all this nitty gritty of COVID. I get it. I understand that like it can cause bacteria in your lungs to become pathogenic. That can lead to inflammation, which then causes swelling, which is the body's natural defense of like trying to immobilize something so it can heal. And in most parts of the body, like your joints and everything, that's fine. But in your lungs, it's not good, right? Your lungs have to move. They have to expand and contract and pump oxygen into your blood so they can keep going. And there's also the other fact of like air and water cannot exist in the same space. And so it can be really bad. So I totally get that and understand that. I also understand other people and the fact that like you only know you have COVID if you're told you have COVID by the very people that profit from you having COVID. So that's like the very textbook definition of a conflict of interest, and it is the industry that is also the #1 cause of personal bankruptcy. So I kind of get both sides, and I can understand why people are skeptical of the whole thing. I'm not going into detail about that. You can be correct and incorrect at the same time. The difference here is less like there's a whole bunch of miscommunication going on, and a lot of like parties are think whatever, not disputing any of that. Okay, what I'm talking about is the very real fact that like when COVID hit, my attendance went from here to right, like I think like 98% just dropped off dramatically. Okay, and the thing is that the statistic from my school especially holds true that the longer a person goes on attending a class, the more likely they are to cancel. And when I had almost everybody stop going to class, you know, that's kind of a big deal. Some of them, they stayed on, they kept paying for a couple months because they were like, oh, this is only going to last a couple months. They didn't know, most of the people didn't know that it was going to continue for a very long time. Right, and so as the year progressed, people just started slowly dropping off, and it actually became harder the year after 2020 than the actual year of COVID. So by the end of the year, essentially every single person who was with me at the beginning of 2020 had left by the end of 2020. So I had a completely rebuilding year. And I'm lucky to be here. There's a lot of martial art places that didn't survive the whole thing. They didn't even survive the year. They certainly didn't survive afterwards. We're talking about a year that like the government literally closed me down for like 6 months and told people not to come to my establishment. They opened up restaurants before they opened up gyms. Like the places that you go to get fit and healthy, they're like, no, don't go to those. Go to these places that are responsible for like heart disease, right? You know, fast food joints and stuff like that were open before gyms were. And I was lumped into that category of gym because like, hey, people get fit here. If you do martial art technique well enough and long enough, it's a workout, right? That's kind of like my big thing is making people like healthy strong, right? But I couldn't do that with COVID because nobody was here, right? And then as that happened, the medical industry added $1 trillion to their already $3 trillion that they were getting. So they made $4 trillion in that year. Okay, this is something responsible for the like, #1 cause of bankruptcy. And in a time when industries were suffering, businesses were closing, people were getting laid off. They added $1 trillion. That's a 1 with 12 zeros behind it. Okay, a number so large that most calculators don't have a display big enough for it. Okay, I put it into a different perspective. 1% of $1 trillion is $10 billion. Okay, so when you have 40 billion or $4 trillion, 1% is $40 billion. I'm pretty sure the government is making more than 1% of that whole thing. I mean, it's 19% of GDP. The craziest thing is that they managed to hold on to that. So they added $1 trillion in 1 year, and then they held on to that, and now it's a $4 trillion industry, and they used that money to expand, and then they increased prices, which, I'm an economist, man, I can tell you price theory, if you have a fixed, finite supply, and you increase the demand, price is going to go up. Alright, so it's not random if it's predictable. And this is totally predictable. They knew the price was going to increase. And so, like, some of my endocrinologist visit, like, tripled. Okay, it's like over $1,000 for one visit. Okay, and that's really just me because I'm a cancer survivor. But still, that's a lot. Okay, that's one of the reasons why I've been pushing it back, because I'm trying to avoid that massive bill. But yeah, so COVID came, not only did that, but like scared people off for such a long time that they started getting into other routines that didn't include martial arts, and they never came back. Like most of the people who were with me prior to COVID are not with me now. They left, they went and did other things and got too involved in that to ever come back here because it just didn't fit with their schedule. Alright, it had nothing to do with it, with me costing too much. Everything else costs too much. Right? So COVID was this thing that has caused not just havoc in my industry, but in so many others, as far as like raising prices and driving people away. So that's one of the reasons why I'm like, hey, I need some help, because I wasn't able to get some of the COVID relief that most businesses were able to get, partly because my business consists of just me, right? I couldn't get a paycheck protection plan because I had no employees to protect their paychecks. And the thing is, that was a loan, which you had to pay back at some point, so I'm kind of glad I didn't get it. I just used a lot of credit cards to help me get through. So I had credit cards and generosity of some awesome people who helped me out, and now I'm just asking for more help from more awesome people to just continuously help me get out of this hole that I've been trying to get out of since COVID. Like, I haven't paid myself since COVID because I've been trying to keep everything together, and I foolishly thought that life was going to go back to where it was prior to COVID, and it never did. So I had to change everything around to best fit that, and I'm still working out those kinks, which is why I'm here asking for you guys to help me out so that I can figure this stuff out and I can get these bills paid and I can get back to doing what it is, you know, beneficial for everyone, which is like my classes, my YouTube channel, my Tarfu bar, those kind of things. Instead of just like, I'm gonna do my best to survive, I want to thrive, right? So COVID was like one of the big things. That, and later on, as things started to pick back up, the government, for whatever reason, decided to push school start times back, which meant that like kids got out of school later, which meant that they could no longer come to my classes because I set my class based on when they could get there, right? The parents couldn't get them there, either for traffic or because after school or whatever for work. There's so many reasons why they could never get them to my class, and I have nothing but adult classes after my kids' classes, so I wasn't going to have my kids go with my adults. I've worked very hard to keep them separate, right? I have a lot of people who specifically have gone to my school and trained here because I don't have them train with kids, alright? There's a massive height difference between some of them, right? There's a maturity difference. It's just, it's better that way for everyone involved, and so they can learn better. They keep them separate. But that was like the financial backbone of my business for like probably a decade, right? My kids program was huge, it was massive, and now it's like very, very, very small, okay? And so, like I said, had to readjust everything and put focus more on adults and fitness and stuff to try to get people in here, try to make up that loss that started with COVID and continue with the school system being the way it is here. Not in, I don't know about everywhere else, I just know that in my particular area it's like, oh, now the schools start later. Shucks, darn.